Hey guys, welcome back. Keegan here over at Seared and Smoked here in Iowa. Nice chilly day, and I'm excited to continue on with our steak series where we're talking about 6 fairly cheap steaks with huge flavor, and we're gonna give them a kick of flavor with some rubs and marinades today. That'll get it done on these steaks and anything else you have in your fridge that you want to throw on the grill. So these are rubs and marinades I've developed over the last couple of years, and some go back even farther than that, probably closer to like maybe 8 years or so, that I still use, and they're some of my favorites. So I wanted to make sure I got you all this information, give you all the recipes today, so when you go in to spring this year, you're gonna bring it, and these would be great weeknight meals or impress your friends on the weekend as well with some new recipes. All right, we do have 6 rubs and marinades to go through, and I explained them in great detail. If you don't want that great detail, then it's okay. I did break it down in chapters below, so you can kind of fast forward and check out all of these marinades and rubs, write down the recipes and get after it, because the important thing is that you try them. I really think it'll change your grilling life for the better and change the lives of your, family and friends. If you're the one hitting the grill, doing the grilling around the house, they're gonna love you for it. All right, so the first steak up, we got our hanger steak, and we're gonna make a nice chili rub for this. It's a really simple rub, decent amount of sea salt, black pepper. I like to use pepper that is kind of in the, medium grain, not cracked, but below that. A little garlic powder, granulated garlic, whatever you have on hand is fine. Small amount of cumin. I find cumin goes a long way, so I take it easy on that. And then we have some ancho chili, one of my favorite ingredients really of all time. And then just a little kick of cayenne. You don't have to put the cayenne in. I like a little kick, so I use it. But this rub is gonna be a little peppery. The ancho really doesn't provide a ton of heat, but it does provide kind of a depth of flavor to it. All right, so see this up with our chili rub. And this is a pretty salty rub, so you don't need a ton, but you don't want to skimp either. We do want to bring some salt into this. It's a pretty thick cut of meat, this particular one. Definitely adjust depending on the thickness of your steak. And you can leave this dry rub just like it is right now, or you can take just a little olive oil, drizzle that. Want it nice, kind of evenly coated. And what this does is just kind of creates like a little bit of like a sauce effect. You still get like a nice crust of flavor on the outside, but whoop, and then sprinkle with a little rice vinegar. I kind of overdid that a little bit, so I'm just going to flip it a few times so I can coat both sides with the vinegar. And it's basically coating the steak with a vinaigrette. So you have the olive oil, and then you have the rice vinegar, and it's just creating just a little bit of a light marinade with our rub. And give a little tanginess, and that is going to be a good steak. All right, next up we have our chuck eye steak, and we're going to make my sweet and salty steak rub. And this has a decent amount of sea salt again, black pepper, some lemon pepper, gives it a little more just basically citric acid, small amount of cumin, Lowry's seasoned pepper, and what this does, it has a lot of like sweeter notes of pepper in it as well. So it's got some, a little bit of kick, but it's mainly just a really good blend of peppers, and that's kind of a secret weapon for a lot of rubs that I use, just giving it a little more, diversity and depth of flavor. And then this is also another secret weapon. This is coconut sugar, and it's an alternative to brown sugar. And I like it because it stays really nice and powdery and doesn't clump as much. A little smoked paprika and some garlic powder, and that'll do it. And as you make these rubs and marinades, definitely give a little taste test. So nice little balanced flavor. Taste the salt, taste the coconut sugar, blend of spices. And this one you can lay on just a little thicker because it's not overly salty. And you want to put a good amount on there so you develop a nice crust on the outside of this steak. And I just like to marinate this one and this rub for 30 minutes up to 2 hours, that time frame. You know, season it before you're kind of getting dinner ready, getting the grill going. Let it sit in the fridge. Pull it out of the fridge, you know, maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes before you're gonna grill, and you're good to go. So you can see there's a good amount of pepper in there, and really creates a nice crust on the steak. All right, now we got our shoulder tender, and this is kind of my version of what a classic steakhouse seasoning should be. So we start out with some black pepper, a mix of oregano and thyme, and you can always experiment with different, you know, herbs for that. Little ancho chili, not a lot. Little lemon pepper. Just a dash here of seasoned salt, so Lowry's seasoned salt. Little garlic pepper. Just a little bit of coconut sugar, so not a lot, so we're not trying to make it real sweet, but just a touch of sweetness. And what that allows you to do by having just a few more ingredients and a little bit of those sugars, it just allows you to put on a little bit thicker, and then finish it off with some sea salt once again. So this guy, you don't want it on too thick. You know, a lean steak, kind of a smaller steak, not too thick. You can always add more salt at the end too. Always a good thing to remember. So, and then since this is a leaner steak, the shoulder tender, I will do a little olive oil drizzle. So any of the leaner steaks, with the exception of, I usually don't do that to like a filet, but a leaner steak, it is kind of nice to give it a little coating of olive oil on there, a little extra fat, develop that flavor crust on the outside. And this guy doesn't need to marinate too long. We'll give this one just a little dash of that rice vinegar. That's what we're looking for. Just a few drips on the top there. Turn it over, couple more drips. Don't need much. And it'll just give just a little extra flavor. And that's our shoulder tender. All right, as we start our marinades for the last 3 steaks, I just want to talk about some ingredients that you might not be familiar with, that we're going to use. And first one is, I call it black vinegar. It's kind of like a fermented, you know, got a lot of punch to it. It's kind of like, for me, it's kind of like if soy sauce was a vinegar, what would it be? And this is kind of it. And you can get this on Amazon, or you can find it in superstores, you know, your supermarket as well. But one ingredient gives a nice tang. It's like a different vinegar you can use. And then, you know, obviously we got rice vinegar. I use this quite a bit on a lot of things. Great for marinades. It's a little lighter. It's a lighter vinegar. So if you want to go a lighter route, you can use this for any of the vinegars that we use. We just got soy sauce. This is a fancy soy sauce because I ran out of the cheap soy sauce, but that's your standard. And then some of your other Asian ingredients. Hoisin sauce. I use this a lot in the Asian marinades. We're going to use this today. It gives it sweetness and a depth of flavor. There's a lot of different ingredients that go in this. You know, you can make it at home yourself, but it's basically brings, you know, I think there's even like peanut butter or something in this, but it's just one of those Asian flavors that you're probably familiar with, but you haven't used maybe the sauce itself. So that's a good one for some sweetness and some depth of flavor. And then oyster flavored sauce does not taste at all like oysters. Don't worry. If it did, maybe that'd be good too, but it doesn't. It's another sweeter sauce. You can use this straight up mix it with a little vinegar, and you can use that for a marinade and, or like a stir fry sauce. But I use this in pretty much all stir fry sauces and pretty much all Asian marinades that I use. So that's a good one to stock as well. And then I'm going to say this wrong, I'm sure. Gochujang. It's a fermented chili paste essentially. So it's got like a little bit of funk to it. Not, you know, it's not. You wouldn't notice it by smell or anything. It's just a more complex flavor for a chili paste. So you could also use just like a garlic chili paste if you want a little kick, but this is gonna provide a little bit of kick and just a little bit of depth of flavor as well, and use this quite a bit in different Asian marinades. So those are things you can pick up. Other vinegars, red wine vinegar, use that a fair amount. I encourage you to really try any vinegars that are out there, see what you like for these different marinades, because that's gonna give you the tang in the marinade, kind of the, you know, the acid that's going to bring the tang in it, and you can try all sorts of different marinades for that. And then if you have a supermarket or a Trader Joe's is where I find these, just like these crushed garlic pods, and you can get them for ginger too. And when you're just making a marinade and you don't want to chop up garlic, and for me in Iowa, it seems like our garlic's always got like green sprouts in the center already. It's not the best. So this is great. You can just use a couple pods in this in your marinade, give it a boost. Use this in a lot of recipes too when I'm doing like slow cooking as well. So awesome stuff. So those are some of the different ingredients that you may not be familiar with, but definitely hit me up with questions down below in the comments. Get back to everybody with questions. So, or if you have other special ingredients you want to share with people, do that as well. So let's get on to these marinades and get these steaks on the grill. All right, so we got an Asian marinade for our flat iron steak, and I'll put measurements for everything on the screen, but I usually just kind of ballpark it with, 2 to 3 tablespoons of the hoisin sauce, another good amount of the oyster sauce. And this is kind of bringing some sweetness and just really just well-rounded flavor to everything. Then we got our soy sauce. Do a little vinegar. Use the rice vinegar. Then we'll use the black vinegar. A little bit of that. A little bit of honey. Our crushed garlic pods here. I'm hoping they sell these at other places. I haven't really looked. I always get them at Trader Joe's, but they're just super useful. You can put a couple in there and it adds a lot of flavor. Stir these babies up, and that garlic will kind of melt down in a few minutes. It usually doesn't take too long. I usually mix this in a smaller bowl. Decided to kind of skip a step just for the sake of moving along the video. But generally, we'll stir this up and give it a taste test before we put the steak in. All right, got our garlic broken down in there. So we're gonna add our heat, maybe a tablespoon or so of like a fermented, gochujang, if I'm saying that correctly. And I like to add some black pepper as well. Add as much as you like, but I add a good amount. I like things on the peppery side. All right, so that's looking good. If it's too runny for you, add some of the thicker elements, some of your hoisin and oyster sauce. If it's too thick, dilute it with a little bit of vinegar. And if it's just, you just want more sweetness, add a little more honey to it. But that recipe I put up on the screen there will be a good start for you. And you can marinate this overnight, but typically I do it for an hour or two, and it turns out really nice. All right, next up we have our flank steak. We're gonna pair it with a nice, just all-purpose steak marinade. I just kind of call it like a steakhouse marinade because I think it goes well with any steak and just gives it a really nice, like robust tanginess to the steak. And it's basically equal parts. So I usually do around 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire. We're gonna use a couple different vinegars. We're gonna use about 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar. And this is a really quick marinade, like 30 minutes, 1 hour is fine. About 2 tablespoons of our dark black vinegar. And then we'll add a little bit of honey, about equal parts, another 2 tablespoons or so. Melt that in there. And then we're adding a couple tablespoons of water too to dilute it because it's a pretty strong sauce. Pretty strong marinade, with all the vinegars and the soy sauce and the Worcestershire, they're all very strong flavors. So if you're gonna marinate this an hour or two, then you add another equal amount of water, like around 2 tablespoons. If you're gonna marinate this overnight, you want to add about 8 tablespoons or so of water to dilute it so your steak doesn't come out just kind of torched with too much flavor from this marinade. And then for a little seasoning, you can experiment with like a half up to 1 tablespoon of garlic powder and onion powder. And this is just kind of in place of another option instead of using fresh garlic, fresh chopped onion or something of that nature, which you could do. diced, minced garlic and onion. We're just using some pantry ingredients to amp up the flavor a little bit. Let that dissolve into the marinade. Then lastly, a good amount of ground pepper, which I like to use. If you want to play around with the peppers, like a Szechuan peppercorn is a fun one to use too. You can grind it up just like you would normal peppercorns, but it has like a little different flavor to it. So if you want to change it up, that's one idea for you. I made this one so many times in my life, I don't even taste test this at all. It's just, I know it'll be fine. Ooh, man, what a day. This is our last marinade we're preparing for our 6 steaks, and it probably takes the most work, but it's worth it if you want to do something special for like a weekend steak taco night, have your friends over, or just for your family. It's great. So we're gonna make our Carne Asada marinade for our skirt steak, and this steak pairs perfectly with this type of marinade. It really takes on all the flavors. So for tacos where you really want like a strong punch to it because you have all those other ingredients in there, then skirt steak is a great way to go. So pretty simple really. We got some soy sauce, got rice vinegar, which we've been using a fair amount today. For our liquids, we're gonna add a juice of an orange. When I think Carne Asada, I want it to have a little bit of that fruitiness. It's kind of like that balance between sweet and salty. I can't attest to the authenticity of this recipe as far as from down south, but it's one that I've kind of developed with the flavors I like for something like this, and give the steak a really nice bite. A lot of freshness, right? We got lime, we got orange. We're adding some kiwi. The kiwi actually has it breaks down the protein of the meat to make it more tender. We add 3 of those garlic pods, give it a punch. We got about half a cup or so of onions, finely diced. Yeah, that's about right. This would be 1/2 of a very large jalapeno, or like 1 smaller jalapeno for a kick. It really won't make this, the steak that spicy, but you'll taste it. And then, a big handful of cilantro chopped up fairly fine. We're adding, maybe like 1/3 of a beer, and I actually don't even really care for Corona that much. My dad loves it. It's okay when you're on a beach in Mexico, but Iowa during the middle of the winter, not great. But for this marinade, it'll work perfectly. I had an extra one in the fridge. And then we can add a little pepper to it. And we're gonna use more of the coconut sugar. You can use brown sugar, but we're gonna add about like 3 tablespoons of a sweetener of your choice. You can use honey too. We've used honey for a couple of different marinades today, and that works just fine too. And once again, this coconut sugar, it's just a little milder. It's very nice and finely ground up. So I just love adding it to rubs and things because it's easy to work with. Want to make sure everything's combined nicely. It's going to be kind of the marinade's going to look chunky because of all the onions and stuff in there, but the cilantro and the onions, along with the other fresh ingredients, are going to just give this skirt steak. It's going to be very vibrant. You're going to bite into it, and you're going to know some of these fresh ingredients were in there. Some of the other marinades, there wasn't a ton of liquid, but this is one you want it swimming in for sure. And then move it around a couple times. This is one generally I'd like to do all day, but at least a couple hours. Then I'll be ready to put on the grill, and we're gonna see all 6 of these steaks on the grill, fired up real soon. Thanks for sticking with me. We're almost there. We got the XL heating up, getting up, over 500 degrees. It'll continue ramping a little bit, but it's really nice and hot at great levels. So we're gonna go ahead and get these steaks on. And I've never done 6 different types of steak on one grilling session. So we'll see how it goes. I'm gonna do my best to get them all kind of in that medium rare temperature zone, take them off around 130. and we'll see how it goes. These look gorgeous. Time to get things off the grill. All right, I think we are into beer at this point, so drinking a little Dale's Pale Ale this afternoon. There's a lot of work for different types of steak, but if you're just doing one of these or two of these, piece of cake. And I thought I was gonna maybe punt and just do them on the gas grill, but I'm really glad I did them on the green egg, because you can just smell the steak on yourself after cooking over it, and these just smell amazing. So let's slice a few, see how they look. Oh, that one's flank got a little overdone. Still kind of medium. For the skirt, this is pretty much how I like it, which is pink in the center. I do not like skirt steak red, because it's just, I feel like it's a little tougher. Oh yeah. The flat iron's looking pretty good. Yeah. That's about where I like my flat iron, right there. All right. This is the shoulder tender. Once again, all these we're keeping in mind the grain. So this one's not as grainy, but definitely want to cut it against the grain. That's a good looking steak. A couple more flanks. One thing nice about some of the different cuts is they vary in thickness. So if you have two people in the house that like more medium to medium rare, and others like more medium to a little over, you usually get some different donenesses. So, all right. And now my personal favorite, the hanger. Oh yeah. And that's almost under. Like for me, that's fine. My wife would probably say that's a little underdone for her. And we definitely do like a little better job in this if we had a couple steaks and maybe just a couple different varieties. But it's time to taste a few of these babies out. These are looking good. This is our hanger with our chili rub. Very nice saltiness coming through. Could use a little more heat on that probably. Our skirt, which was our Carne Asada. I usually marinate that overnight, but it actually did pretty well with like a 1 hour marinade for that same marinade. So I think a couple hours you'd feel pretty confident. Our flank is that's kind of our steakhouse rub, or not rub, steakhouse marinade. And that's like one I made a ton of times. Good every time. A little salty, a little tangy. The flat iron came out about perfect. This is just where I want it. And that's our Asian marinade. Really just like a well-rounded, nice flavor. You know, you might not be able to place it as a certain type of marinade. It's just got a really nice, a little sweetness, a little saltiness. Just that's really what I'm going for in most steaks, is really just kind of a little of each. All right. Our shoulder tender steak. Cooked that one good. Nice kind of medium rare in there. And that turned out really good. It's got I mean, that's just kind of our classic steak rub. So a little salty, a little touch of the herbs on there. Anything you do on a charcoal grill is going to kind of mute the nuances a little bit, I feel. So, you know, if you do it on a gas grill, you'll probably taste actually some of the ingredients a little bit more, but the flavor off a charcoal grill is just so good. And our sweet and salty rub for our little chuck eye steak here. Oh yeah. Once again, that's about perfect for me. I consider that kind of in the medium rare camp. You can see kind of some veins of fat running through there. And that's one of my favorite like all around rubs. You can use that on pork. You can use that sweet and salty rub on chicken. It's pretty much, you can use it on like smoking ribs. Very good. Well, I cooked some of those better than others as expected with all the different variety in one grill session and trying to crank it out on pressure for a video. But you should definitely try some of these. Like, these are my favorites. They really are. Try some of the rubs, try some of the marinades. I think the marinades will like knock you off the block. I think they're really good. And the rubs, the sweet and salty is probably my favorite of all the rubs that I've showcased here. And the others are just very good standard rubs to use if you have a good piece of meat. Like this hanger steak, it's hard to mess up this hanger steak because it's so good. And sometimes you just don't want to add a lot to it. So one of those standard steak rubs is very nice as well. And if you're enjoying the steak videos, I got another one on the horizon. If it's not on this screen here for you to click on, it should be there soon as I get it published. And we're going to tackle some Wagyu, however you say it, steaks, and compare them to a premium cheap steak. See who we can crown the winner. $100 versus $10, whatever it is. I got some expensive ones in the freezer, and it's actually my first time cooking them. So that should be interesting. That should be pretty interesting.